the Sermon on the Mount, otherwise known as the greatest sermon ever preached. It's Jesus' amazing sermon found for us in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Matthew's the first book of the New Testament, and I'm so grateful that you're starting this journey with me through the Sermon on the Mount today. Let's dive right into the text of the Scriptures. We know that Jesus was engaging a lot of crowds at this point in his ministry. He'd been healing a lot of people. And Matthew 5:1 says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. And his disciples came to him, and he began to teach them." Now, just two operative words I'd like to draw your attention to in this verse. First of all, he went to a mountainside. And these would have been the hills on the northern side of the Sea of Galilee. And on a beautiful sunny day, it's a gorgeous view out over the northern part of the lake. And large crowds could have gathered on those sloped hillsides. And this is where he went, so that's why we call it the Sermon on the Mount. And then notice also the word disciples. In other words, this was a sermon geared at Jesus followers. And if you're a Jesus follower, you want to pay close attention to Jesus saying, here's what people look like when they follow me and come under the rule of my kingdom. If you're not a Jesus follower, I'm really glad you're part of this process. And I'm sure you'd want to be interested in what the most influential human being in history would have to say about the core ethics of life. But he addressed it, however, not to his religious critics in Jerusalem, but this was a message to his disciples. And he begins with a list of 8 blessings. And so we call this the Beatitudes. And he's going to answer, first of all, the question, what does it mean to be blessed? Blessed, in the Greek word that Matthew is writing in, it can sometimes be translated happy. I find the word happy is a little on the moody side, but it can also be translated fortunate. I like that. It's just kind of in general a well-being word. It's like fortunate, happy, well off are these kinds of people. And not only who those kind of people are, but what it actually means to be blessed. And so let's run through the 8 blessings and see Jesus' definition of being blessed. First of all, and there's our word blessed. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for what does it mean to be blessed? The kingdom of heaven belongs to them. The kingdom is always rulership. The rule of heaven itself we get to participate in, with both its responsibilities and especially its privileges. Then he said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." What does it mean to be blessed? It means to walk in the comfort that God can bring to us. "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth." Authority, partnership with God throughout all eternity. Will inherit the earth, will rule and reign with him someday. "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness." And what an amazing phrase. They will be filled. This is what it means to be blessed, with this sense of overflowing, will be filled. "Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy." You receive mercy. This is what it means to be blessed. You're not judged and condemned. You have mercy brought towards you. Every one of us need mercy. "And blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." This is part of what it means to be blessed, ultimately, to be in the presence of God and to see and to know God. "And blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." We actually can be God's own children, under his watchful eye, under his protective care. And then verse 10, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Now notice that the kingdom of heaven is also the blessing pronounced on the very first, in the very first of the Beatitudes. "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." So he begins and ends by saying, what's God's blessing? It's coming under the rule of heaven itself. And probably the other 6, like being the children of God and receiving mercy and being filled and inheriting the earth, they're probably all synonyms for coming under the rule of heaven. He's basically saying this: you get to participate in the kingdom of God that is coming. So that's the first question. What does God's blessing look like? And then who are the blessed? And so let's run through this really quickly one more time. And now look at that part of the verse where Jesus identifies the people who get to participate in the kingdom of heaven. And it's a rather strange list. It's a very countercultural list. It's for the religious elite in Jesus' time, it's a not what you would expect list. Get this, he said, who participates in the kingdom of heaven? The poor in spirit. That would normally mean the religiously disqualified. And blessed are those who feel sad, who mourn. And blessed are the meek. Not normally he would think would be part of the rulership of heaven. But blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Normally alone, those are negative words, to hunger, be hungry, and to be thirsty. But he said those are the blessed ones, the hungry and the thirsty, for they'll be filled. And then he said, blessed are those who are merciful. Blessed are those who have a purity in their heart. They're pure in heart. And those who seek peace. Blessed are the peacemakers. Not only seek peace, but help to reconcile those who are not at peace with one another. And then lastly, blessed are those who are persecuted. Those who are hated because they participate as followers of Jesus in the kingdom of heaven, and they're being hurt and harmed because of it. So those are the people that God blesses. So having answered those two questions, what is God's blessing, and then who are the people who are blessed? There's two ways we can interpret the Beatitudes. These are like two lenses through which we look at the Beatitudes. And the first lens is what I would call an applicational lens, where we say these are sort of the ethical foundations for a good way to live. And my dear friend, the late Dr. George Wood, he often would teach on the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes in particular, and he uses an applicational lens. He says if you're poor in spirit, it means you need help. And none of us reach breakthroughs in our lives without at some point admitting that we need help. And so this is sort of the door opener to being able to really see change happen in our lives. Just that ability to admit, I need help. And those who mourn, the mournful, he said, we live sensitively. We can have empathy for other people because of the pain we've been through, but I am sensitive. To live with meekness means I'm strong but easy to live with. Meekness would be strength under control. And so I'm strong, but I'm easy to live with. Wouldn't that be wonderful if you're married? Wouldn't that be wonderful with your roommates or your best friends? I'm strong, but easy to live with. Hungry. I want to keep growing. Merciful. I care. I really care about people. Pure. My conscience is clear. Peacemaker. I love this one. Let me be your friend. I'll be easy to be a friend with. Even if you're different than me, let me be your friend. And then persecuted. I rejoice even in my down times. Even in those times, I rejoice. And so this would be an applicational lens. What we're doing is taking the people who God says are blessed. He says that they're people who take on a kingdom lifestyle marked by these things. Willingness to admit help, and sensitive and strong, but easy to live with. We keep growing. We're hungry to grow. We care. Our conscience is clear. We're able to be friends with people, and we even know how to manage our downtimes. So that would be an applicational lens. Maybe in your group interaction at the end of this, you'll want to explore that. But I'd like to just put in front of you a view that you may not have heard discussed with the Beatitudes quite as much, but I think it's incredibly freeing. And I just want you to hear me out on this, because it's not an applicational lens. It has really nothing to do with what we do, but it's a grace lens that we look at the Beatitudes through. And the grace lens revisits who Jesus says are blessed. And Jesus, in this grace lens, we would see Jesus drawing from things that were familiar to his world, where on the one hand you had the dominating Romans, on the other hand you had the religiously elite that were oppressing people more than leading them. And disenfranchising huge parts of the population, both spiritually and politically. And especially on the spiritual side, he is saying, this is even who my kingdom reaches. The gospel even reaches these kinds of people. First of all, the poor in spirit. So in that context of Jesus' time, these would be the people who were disqualified and disenfranchised by the religious establishment of the time. And those who mourn, those who have had their heart broken and have experienced deep loss. The meek, in a world where meekness did mean weakness, the meek are the people who get walked all over. The hungry and the thirsty for righteousness are those who have probably been victims of injustice, and there's just this yearning in their heart for something to be made right again. And although the next three can sound pretty good, the merciful, in a time when might made right, and if you are, on the other hand, not a dominating person, but a merciful person, it would just be used against you, turned against you to take advantage of you and walk all over you. Or the pure in heart, who probably because of their purity in heart, they're always falling short of their own expectations. Not to mention just the innocence of their purity being exploited and taking advantage of, especially by the religious establishment. And even the peacemakers, who often when you're trying to make peace, you find yourself in a no-win situation. Even the peacemakers end up being sidelined in a world that says no, brute force and domination are the way to truly get things done in this world, not those wimpy peacemakers. And lastly, those who are persecuted. We can understand that. Those who just hurt because of paying the price for what they believe. And Dallas Willard, in the third volume of his epic Divine Conspiracy, he writes this: the religious system of his day left the multitudes out, but Jesus welcomed them all into his kingdom. Anyone could come as well as any other, and they still can. That is the gospel of the Beatitudes. And then Willard goes on to sort of paraphrase in more contemporary terms what Jesus might have been trying to say in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the physically repulsive. Blessed are those who smell bad, the twisted, the misshapen, the deformed, the too big, the too little, the too loud, then he gets a little personal, the bald, the fat, and the old. For they are riotously celebrated in the party of Jesus. That's the good news of the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes aren't, you need to be mournful and merciful in order to qualify for God's blessing. No, even to those disenfranchised, not to mention those who are crushed and those who are victims of injustice, everybody who finds themselves on the outside of the world system and the religious systems, they are the ones for whom Jesus has come. I love this because it means not one of us is disqualified. That's why in Acts chapter 15, the apostles, they're trying to talk about how the good news comes even to Gentiles who Jews hated. And they're in this Jewish meeting and they're trying to say, no, we believe it is through the grace of our Lord Jesus that we are saved, just as they are. They may not be like us. They may have been disfranchised before us, but God's grace has come to every person. The rule of heaven brings a spiritual confidence to every one of us. So as you interact in your groups, may something of God's amazing heart and something about the reality of our situation, how easily we can feel excluded. May all those things come together to a new awareness of who we are in Jesus, and by his grace, we all have a place in the rule of heaven.